give God praise and thanks for this opportunity again to address the 2013 budget estimates. And I hold myself to an encouragement I heard yesterday to be reasonable and responsible. But Mr. Speaker, before I get into my budget proper, I want to expand on information given to us by the Honorable Orphan Ali. He gave some information yesterday, and my information from the
remember it. Irfan, not Orphan.
Sorry. My information is dated July the 27th, 2012. And it reads thus. I just want to read one point of it, and it speaks to drinking water in Guyana, and this is a report by the U.S. Embassy. The water supply throughout the country is considered contaminated.
The year of that report?
2012, I could go it over again. July 27, 2012, U.S. Embassy, 100 Young and Drew Street, Georgetown. Drinking water. The water supply system throughout the country should be considered contaminated, and travelers should treat all boiled water before consumption of purchased boiled water. Medical facilities and health information. Medical care in Guyana does not meet general international standards. Care is available for minor medical conditions, although quality is very inconsistent. Emergency care and hospitalization for major medical illnesses and surgery are very limited due to lack of inappropriate trained specialists, below standards in hospital care, poor sanitation. I did wrote on this sometime, and I came under a lot of scrutiny from a good friend of mine, but I also said tuberculosis is an increasing serious health concern in Guyana. And finally, driving in Guyana can be potentially very hazardous. The traffic accident facilities in Guyana is higher than in the United States. There's another piece of document I want to read before we look at the budget. And this document is from the OECD, and it's entitled The Role of the Legislature in Budget Process, Recent Trends and Innovation. And it reads, legislators have the capacity to amend or reject the budget proposal of the executive and to submit one of their own, and this is happening in Sweden and the United States. It also went on to say the legislator can amend or reject executive budget proposal. In Brazil, I'm joined on President, sir. In Brazil, the Congress now has the power to cut and to extend the budget. Finally, sir, the European Empowered Parliament rejected 1.3 trillion EU budget proposal. I now turn to ours. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I want to be reasonable. As a student of economics, I want to be magnanimous too. As a student of economics, I understand the serious nature of putting a budget together. So I want to acknowledge the work of the minister and the staff in putting the budget. Mr. Speaker, according to economist Milton Keynes and Professor Hosner, a budget proposal or a budget estimate should produce sustainable livelihood for its people. I am not here to condemn the budget, but I'm here to draw a parallel with budget provisions and what is taking place in Region 10 and leave you to draw your own conclusions. Mr. Speaker, if one is to look at the budget, especially in the case of Region 10, we need to examine the socio-economic conditions prevailing at the time of the budget. We need to look at the challenges and opportunities in Region 10. Then we need to look at the budget and examine the kind of provisions that are made available for Region 10. Mr. Speaker, the socio-economic conditions on the ground are as follows. growing unemployment. Somebody spoke of the Chinese company. I need to bring them up to speed that the Chinese company employed 450 workers, and they're working them overtime, triple time, because truly,
I don't know if you refer to both sides or?
both sides, and truly, sir, they're supposed to be hiring over 1,000 persons. In previous year during the PNC administration, we had 5,000 persons working at the bauxite industry. Contractors had 2,000 persons working. So I'm saying there's a rising cost, increasing poverty, rundown infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, broken roads, hundreds of our young people graduating from secondary schools with CXC, unemployed, languishing at home in poverty. Mr. Speaker, conservative estimates has placed unemployment in Region 10 as 35% of the working population. Mr. Speaker, we don't have a television station that we could call our own. Our television station is run like a Russian gulag. I'm looking at the budget and one would feel I'm looking at an energy instead of a budget proposal. But sir, I want to be more specific. Agency 80, Upper Delaware bodies, receives provision or allocation from the budget in 4 areas: regional administration and finance, public works, education delivery, and health services. So I challenge this budget as it relates to promoting sustainable development, because residents in Region 10 has recognized that agriculture is the next frontier for development in the region. So I submit here consultancy work by Vocati and Associates of Trinidad, and this is what they wrote. I have the assessment here. Region 10, with its large unoccupied space, 22,975 arable land ready for agriculture, 1,775 forested land are available for agriculture. There's a large labor pool. They have identified Takama Savannah, Ibini, Divelt, Kimbia, Buruni, Kokwani. Mr. Speaker, what is troubling that these areas are occupied by an indigenous population. So a shortage of funding of Region 10 is also a serious attempt to starve and malign and underdevelop our indigenous peoples in Region 10. Mr. Speaker, there's a second document prepared by the government, land use plan, a pilot area in Guyana, and I wish to quote from it. It's a collaborative effort between the government of Guyana and the German government, and it reads that Ichuni has great opportunity for kaolin, while generally there is good forestry land for logging. Mr. Speaker, here is the conclusion in this document. Linden could become the next economic center and a transit point to the hinterland, along with the promotion of cash crops and eco-tourism. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? In our budget estimates, the budget released funding on the 4 heads, and no money was released for agriculture, while there is great potential in Region 10 for agriculture. And I should note, sir, that this year in the releases on the public works, we have seen a reduction of $60 million under this head. Mr. Speaker, I submit in the midst of what I might call a comic situation. That the residents of Region 10, there seem to be a deliberate attempt, sir, to underdevelop Region 10. If a budget is supposed to provide for sustainable development, the macro focus of a budget is to promote sustainable development, and a good life for all Guyanese. And here we have thousands of acres waiting for funding, and this budget has failed to provide any funding for agriculture. Somebody have asked me to be reasonable. My question is, can I be so reasonable to support a budget that speaks to my underdevelopment? Mr. Speaker, I want to be specific in some more areas. Gender issues. The budget provision for Region 10 has failed to address the issues of women in Region 10. Gender equity. We are at a severe disadvantage in Region 10. Our women are employed in low-paid security jobs. I raised this last year, and a good friend of mine on the other side had promised to look in it. But we are friends, I wouldn't call the name. Sir, they occupy the sweepers of government facilities and earning less than the minimum wage. One would have expected in this new budget, provisions would have been made to address issues affecting women. Most of them are under the minimum wage. There's high unemployment among the women. There's high unemployment among the men. And there's serious migration in Region 10 because our men folks are going after jobs outside of Region 10. So you can understand what is happening in the homes. Mr. Speaker, we had asked for years for the erection of a halfway home for women that are exposed to domestic violence. Every year there is the promise, but this year again there is no provision in the budget. And sir, this also affects the women in Kukwani, being in all those areas that are indigenous people occupied. And I'm asking the framers of this budget, they need to take a visit to these communities and be aware and see the underdevelopment that is taking place in indigenous communities. Mr. Speaker, the budget omits the contribution and the struggles of our women in Region 10 to survive. Today I salute the women in Region 10 in the midst of all of the economic decadence and the orchestrated struggles placed on us by the PPP administration. Our women folks are still living and they're working hard to move the family. Mr. Speaker, the budget for Region 10 failed to address issues affecting our young people. The budget has failed to address the issues facing school leavers who are unemployed. I submit that the UNPRSP has identified that youths have a role to play in their own development. We recognize that poverty reduction is not just an attempt to meet the young people. Basically, it's also the participation of young people in their own development. Throughout Region 10, youth development programs remain drastically under-resourced, ill-equipped. The budget presentation should be a format or a tool to develop our young people. I checked this budget cover to cover because basically it's under 4 programs. The question is asked, where do our hundreds and thousands of young people go? Where do they turn for a better livelihood? How could I, as a representative of Region 10, go back to my community, go back to the thousands of young people who are unemployed, who are eking out an existence, some are washing bottles and selling, most of them are just languishing unemployed. Mr. Speaker, how reasonable could I get to go back to Region and say, I have supported a budget that speaks to the underdevelopment and marginalization of the people of Region 10. Mr. Speaker, the budget has failed to promote a program to reduce extreme hunger and poverty among our young people. There is no initiative There's no program. There's no plan. If you check the budget, there is nothing dealing with young people in Region 10. And Mr. Speaker, at Wisma, there are 25 grounds at Wisma that are in disarray. You go to Aichuni, there are 4 grounds. You go to Kokwani, there are 3 grounds right now. If you go across the Mackenzie, we counted 18 grounds, all in a state of disrepair. You know what I like in Region 10? The young people are fighting back. They're aware of their struggles. They're playing basketball using bicycle rims as they hoop to throw their balls in. While millions of dollars, we are told, are in this budget. How could we support such a budget when the young people are seeing us as failing? Mr. Speaker, these are the facts. And you know what I'm happy about, Mr. Speaker? Despite the presentations here, the members on the government side, who from time to time will say to me, I'm coming to Linden. Because of the fact I am always reasonable and responsible. But I promise my good friend, the Honorable Neil Kumar, dear friend, I promise him. I promise him.
Yes, I want to hear just so that's your friend.
You see, the word of God said, if your enemies or those who perceive to be enemies, you need to love them. And that's the diction that I follow. Sir, there is no agenda, sir. Check the budget. I listened to the Honorable Minister of Education, and the truth is, a lot of work is being done in the Ministry of Education. What I'm saying here, there is no specific program or budgetary allocation to deal with school-based violence. It has gone beyond. Even speaking to the framers in the department or in the Ministry of Education, mano a mano, they're at wit's end because, Mr. Speaker, these things can't be fixed by political rhetoric. Monies have to be spent. Monies have to be committed to the Regional Democratic Council, to the people who are elected to serve their people, who understands the nature of the problems, that they themselves could work and solve these problems. But we can't stay in Georgetown and promote a budget with huge numbers, but basically there is no output from such a budget. Mr. Speaker, in the land use plan prepared by this government, it speaks to opportunities in tourism. Every year, as this document is updated, there is much talk about development in Region 10 about tourism. But again, I draw your attention to the budget releases and provision. This is more hot air than reality. There isn't anything in the budget that speaks to tourism. Places have been identified, the mined out areas, Rockstone, parts of Aichuni, parts of Kokwani have been identified as places for ecotourism and every other thing that relates to tourism. You know what, sir? At the end of the day, we are faced with yet another budget. A lot of figures, a lot of numbers, but Region 10 seem not to be a part of the agenda of this government. And we are suspicious that there is an organized or orchestrated program to develop Region 10. Because you check it, there is nothing in the budget. Mr. Speaker, even in the areas of agriculture, we have been bringing this year after year, the issue of land titles. It remains a contentious issue. And so I could go further. Over the past 3 weeks, we had reason to eject persons that claimed that they were sent by the government to occupy lands in Region 10. But I need to sound the one in Region 10 is like Fort Knox. Once you come in Region 10 to occupy property that don't belong to you, well, the rest is in the fine print. We are yet to release land leases, and there is nowhere in the budgetary allocations, there is nowhere in the budget that addresses this issue, and it's a contentious issue year after year. But overall, it marginalizes the people who want to get involved in agriculture because they can't go to the bank for a loan, they can't use the land as collateral, hence they're at square one. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, while the Honorable Minister of Education made a good presentation of works in the area of education, the budget provision is yet to address the state of our teachers in riverine areas. If you check the record, in the month of December, teachers had to leave riverine areas, roof blew off, step collapsed, and a whole lot of things went wrong. Minister, this wasn't reported to you, I'm very sorry, but this is fact coming out of Region 10. And, sir, there is nothing in the budget that speaks to improving the lack of teachers in the riverine areas. This is a fact. Sir, I'm speaking now concerning disaster preparedness. And by extension, sir, I need to drop in a caveat here as it relates to disaster preparedness, even in this house before I turn to Region 10. When the budget was being read by the Honorable Minister of Finance, there was a movement of a glass, and you felt the tension because all along the corridors were cameras. As a disaster preparedness practitioner, I was a bit tense. If something had happened in this house, there would have been a catastrophe. I posit, despite this is not in the Region 10 estimates or budget, that we are sitting on a disaster where Parliament is concerned, how it is currently configured. But let me go back to Region 10. Mr. Speaker, macroeconomic forces, fragile physical environment, and the local economy are seriously affected our vulnerability as it relates to disasters. The people of Region 10, the economy, the infrastructure, the funding that have been released, there is no way we could respond to a disaster in Region 10. We have been calling over the past 5 years. Some persons remember in the year 2005 that Region 10 played host to over 2,000 persons that migrated from the East Coast during the flooding. And so we had to put up makeshift provisions for disaster situations. While some persons look at this as a misnomer, as a practitioner of disaster preparedness, our budget, again, it's like a skeleton. And I could repeat myself again, Honorable Member. The budget is like an elegy, a mournful poem, a mournful reading. Yes, those who the literature remember elegy of a graveyard, a country churchyard. This budget is like the elegy, it's an elegy. You're looking, one looks in a budget, despite who prepares the budget, for the impetus to take a community forward. Region 10, based on all the shenanigans of the government, based on all of the masquerades, right now, not a eulogy, so an elegy here. Sir, I guess I just have to help this English, sir. Sir, I want to submit here that there is no new investment in Region 10 listed in this budget. I want to conclude, and maybe this might, and there was a precedent from another country. We have been hearing about the one vote majority, and you've heard it so often, you wonder if it's the record is stuck. But there was a time when there was 5 votes majority. That record's supposed to be playing simultaneously with the one vote majority. But it is not. Mr. Speaker, there is precedent though. There is precedent in the world, and I need to share it here. In Kenya, the government has passed a 1.4 trillion shilling budget. Basically, they took this budget to Parliament. Shillings, yeah, to Parliament. It was a very contentious, they had some of the same situations that we're going through right now. But you know what happened? The government found common ground with the opposition because it wasn't a coalition, because they recognized at the end of the day what is at stake was the development of the country. And this was the agreement that came through. They agreed to pass supplementary provisions of 56 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, shillings. Mr. Speaker, I don't think that we have gone beyond redemption at this point. The parliament in Kenya had to pause, had to examine where they're going. And the government was pragmatic and said to the opposition, we need to meet again. Hence the 55 billion shillings, a supplementary provision that pleased the opposition. I need to move on. Mr. Speaker, in the Marshall Islands,
Your time has elapsed, so you have about 4 minutes to give your
Mr. Speaker, in the Marshall Islands, they're considering, based on the parliamentary discussions and the problems that the government is having to pass its budget as it relates to the opposition. In the Marshall Islands, the government right now is considering a $32.7 million supplementary budget because their agreement was fostered with the opposition. I posit here, sir, that in this House, we still have a number of days to conclude the budget proceedings. Hence, I'm saying to you, sir, that the results, whatever comes out of this budget, is as a result of what we've done here. But this might be our last and final moment to do something positive again. Thank you very much.